Tonight, we're diving into one of the most terrifying legends to ever crawl out of the cold, dark woods, the Wendigo. A cursed spirit of endless hunger, born from desperation, madness, and something far worse. Have you ever felt like something was watching you, even when you were completely alone? They say it watches from the trees, silent and still, waiting for the moment you're weakest. And when it comes, you won't hear footsteps, just the wind and the hunger. The Wendigo is one of the most chilling creatures in North American folklore, its origins deeply rooted in Algonquian Native American mythology. But the Wendigo is more than just a monster, it is a curse. A spirit of insatiable hunger born when a person succumbs to the ultimate taboo, cannibalism. Towering and gaunt, the Wendigo's skeletal frame appears stretched by its endless starvation. Its pale, frost-bitten skin clings tightly to bone, and its hollow eyes burn with an eerie, otherworldly glow. But its most haunting feature is the twisted antlers rising from its skull, gnarled and jagged like the branches of a cursed tree, casting long, unnatural shadows in the moonlight. It moves with unnatural grace, its presence bringing a chilling stillness to the air. Hidden deep within the forest, it lurks, watching, waiting, whispering in voices not its own, and when its hunger becomes unbearable, it hunts. Welcome to Whispers After Dark, where the shadows speak and the night listens. Now let's get on with our story. On the forgotten shores of Black Hollow Lake sits a cabin where the woods grow darker and the hunger never died. Something ancient lingers there, watching, waiting just beyond the tree line where the cold mist lies. It doesn't hunt like a beast, it hungers like a nightmare, slow, cold, endless. And though the legend faded, it was never gone. They say Black Hollow Lake is calm, at first, but when the cold fog creeps in, the silence feels wrong, like the whole forest is holding its breath. This is the story of a forgotten cabin deep in the hollow, and the ancient hunger that watches from the dark. It was supposed to be just another fishing trip. Two brothers, Mark and Jesse, returned to their grandfather's old lakefront cabin, hidden deep in Black Hollow, miles from the nearest town, and even farther from cell reception. The place hadn't been touched in over 20 years. Dust covered the windows, cobwebs clung to the corners, and the old dock groaned like it remembered every step ever taken on it. The place held the memories of their childhood. They had loaded up Mark's old truck, anxious to leave behind the noise of city life and the everyday stress for the peace and quiet of the lake. But the silence they found wasn't peaceful. On the second night, a storm rolled in. Thunder cracked like trees splitting in half, and rain pounded the old roof. Jesse couldn't sleep. Maybe it was just his imagination, but he thought he could hear footsteps on the porch. He kept thinking about the stories Grandpa used to tell them, the ones about the creatures in the woods, about how people would go into Black Hollow and never come out. But there was one story that came to his mind as the storm raged outside. It was straight out of a horror movie, a legend of a creature of insatiable hunger. The Wendigo lives up in the woods, Grandpa would say, rocking in his creaky old chair by the fire. It comes when the cold sets in, feeds on the greedy, the lost. It's always hungry, and once you hear it cry, it already knows your name. Sometimes I hear its call, always in your grandma's voice. Soft, sweet, trying to lure me out. One day it'll take me, just like it will you. Jesse laughed it off as a kid, but now, with the wind howling like a living thing and something tapping faintly at the window, he wasn't so sure. Outside, lightning lit up the sky as thunder rolled across the lake's dark waters. He got out of bed and slowly walked to the window and pulled the curtain aside only a bit. The tapping was gone. Just trees, darkness, rain. Occasionally he got a glimpse of the dock. For a moment, quicker than he could blink, a figure was there. Tall, thin, with a tangle of something like antlers. Jesse blinked and it was gone. The tapping came again, this time around the side window by the kitchen sink to the back. Tap, tap, tap. Then silence, then again a shape. Tall, wrong. Stepped out from behind the tree line. It looked like a man, but too thin, too long, and its eyes white, glowing. Jesse stepped back, heart hammering. "Mark," he whispered. "Mark, wake up." Mark stirred, irritated. "Someone's out there." That's when they heard it. A scream, not quite human, not quite animal, somewhere in between, long and hollow, like it had been dragged up from the bottom of a frozen throat. Mark grabbed the axe from beside the fireplace. They shut off the lantern, held their breath, and then something stepped onto the porch. The wood creaked, slow and deliberate, step by step by step, a scraping sound like claws raking across the wood of the cabin walls. Then nothing, no knock, no growl, just the sound of breathing on the other side of the wall, wet, rattling, and unnatural. The sounds taunted them for hours. When morning finally broke, the porch was empty, but the muddy ground showed prints that weren't human, long, clawed, deep. For a long time, Jesse stared into the woods at the growing mist just beyond the tree line, like he could still hear it calling his name. Jesse kept replaying the night in his head, those hollow screams, the clawed footprints, the breathing just beyond the wall. While they ate breakfast, Mark tried to explain it away. A bear, maybe, or some kind of trick of the wind. But Jesse noticed the way Mark gripped his coffee cup. He didn't believe his own words. What if the stories Grandpa told were true? What if that Wendigo thing did finally come for him? Jesse asked. I mean, he came up here one weekend and just never came back. Don't go there, Jesse, Mark said. He was old and too stubborn for his own good. He probably just had a heart attack out in those damn woods somewhere. I'm going fishing. Are you coming? They spent the rest of the day fishing. The lake, once peaceful, looked gray and dead beneath the overcast sky. Not a single fish bit, not a bird sang. Even the trees seemed still, as if the whole forest was holding its breath. By late afternoon, the air had turned colder than it should have been for that time of year, the kind of cold that slips beneath your skin and makes your bones ache. Twilight came early, too early, and with it, the feeling. Mark felt it first, like something watching from just beyond the tree line, a shape in the gloom, half seen through the fog. Tall, wrong. As the moon rose higher in the night sky, it moved. Silent, not exactly walking, more like gliding between the trees, as if it didn't need to touch the ground, as if it wasn't made for this world. He froze mid-step on the dock, the hair on his neck rising. He blinked, and it was gone. Icy rain began to fall as he walked to the truck and tried to crank it, dead. He didn't tell Jesse. That night, the voices came. They started just after midnight, whispering from the woods, too faint to make out at first. Mark had just settled into bed when Jesse shook him, pale-faced. "Do you hear that?" he asked. Mark listened. At first, it sounded like the wind curling through the trees. Then, words, muted, repeating. It was a man's voice, almost familiar, haunting. The voice called again. This time they understood. "Come." And then the voice came again. This time it called their names. It was soft, familiar, and coming from every direction. "No one knows we're here," Mark said under his breath. The brothers sat in silence, backs to the wall, eyes fixed on the black windows. The whispers continued, circling the cabin like vultures. Then came the scratching, not at the door this time, but the roof. Something was up there, crawling, dragging itself across the shingles. Slow, deliberate, and then a thud, right above their heads. Mark gripped the axe. Jesse's grip tightened on his hunting rifle. Neither moved, and both barely breathed. The thudding stopped, but they didn't sleep. The next morning, Mark found something at the base of the cabin, tufts of black hair, tangled with old blood. No footprints this time, just a strange smell in the air, like rotting meat left too long in the sun. But the weather was freezing. The smell shouldn't have been there. That evening, they sat on the porch steps. Mark told his brother about what he saw by the lake and the truck's dead battery. Jesse just nodded, then admitted he'd seen something too, reflected in the cabin's window the night before. The brothers scanned the tree line, uneasy in the growing cold silence of the lake. They agreed to leave in the morning. If the truck wouldn't start, they would hike out. But the woods had other plans. A tall shape moved silently in the tree line, watching from the mists. Its lipless grin let out a hiss in the silence. Around it the ground froze. As night fell, the storm returned, heavier than before. The wind howled like it wanted in, and the whispers came again. Louder now, more voices. Some sounded like the cries of children lost, lonely. Others weren't quite human. The shadows in the corners of the cabin began to move, stretching, crawling. Jesse lit every lantern he could find. Mark boarded the windows, but nothing stopped the voices. Nothing silenced the dragging footsteps on the roof. Then came the knock, 1, 2, 3, then silence, and a voice calling through the door. It was their grandfather's voice, but their grandfather had died 12 years ago. "Let me in, boys. It's cold out here." Jesse stepped toward the door, eyes wide, hands trembling. Mark caught his arm. "That's not Grandpa," he whispered. The thing outside laughed, low, cruel, inhuman. And then the door bulged inward as if something enormous had thrown its weight against it. They ran, through the back window, out into the woods, into the storm. No flashlights, no plan, just the blind urge to escape. But the forest wasn't the same. The trees had closed in. The paths were gone. Time felt wrong, like they'd stepped into a place the world had forgotten. Behind them something followed, fast, silent, just a breath behind their heels. Jesse tripped, cut his leg deep on a rock. Mark dragged him forward until the trees parted again and the lake appeared. The old dock, the cabin in the distance, windows glowing. They had circled back. They hadn't escaped at all. The creature was hurting them. They stood at the edge of the lake, breathless, soaked, bleeding, and cold. The cabin windows flickered, lanterns still burning inside. But the air felt wrong, too still. No wind, no storm, just silence. Mark helped Jesse up the dock, each board creaking louder than the last. The cabin, once a place of warmth and memory, now looked like a trap waiting to close. "I don't think we're supposed to be here," Jesse whispered. "I don't think we ever left," Mark replied. Then they saw it, inside the cabin. A shadow moving just beyond the light, tall, bony, its limbs too long, its head crowned with what looked like antlers made of bone and rot. It was watching them, and smiling a lipless horror of sharp, jagged teeth. The brothers froze. Then the door creaked open, on its own. Inside, the cabin looked different, darker, warped. The fire was burning cold, flames blue, not orange, and the shadows on the walls moved without light to cast them. They found themselves walking up the hill and towards the cabin. They had no will of their own, and no matter how hard they struggled, they got closer step by step. Together they stepped onto the porch. They fought against the pull of the cabin, but it was no use. Once inside, the door slammed shut behind them. The room stretched, impossibly large now, too big for the cabin's size. The air was thick with the stench of decay and frost. Jesse raised the rifle. Mark held the axe, but their hands trembled, their breath froze in the air. The Wendigo stepped forward, its eyes, milky glowing, met theirs, and for a moment time stopped. Then it spoke, not with words, but inside their heads. Like a scream buried in snow, "You smell like hunger, and I never forget the taste of bloodlines." Mark swung the axe. It passed through mist. The creature vanished, then reappeared behind him. Jesse fired the rifle, but the sound was swallowed by the unnatural quiet. The shot hit, nothing. The Wendigo didn't attack like an animal. It waited, played, watched, fed off fear like it was meat. The brothers backed into the far corner, weapons raised, hearts pounding, and then the cabin began to shift, walls pulsing like lungs, floorboards cracking, bleeding black water. The air felt like being buried alive. That's when Jesse realized the truth. They were never meant to survive. This place wasn't a cabin anymore. It was a mouth, and they were already inside it. Some say a rescue team found the place months later, empty, no brothers, no blood, just claw marks on the walls and strange symbols carved into the floor. Others say you can still hear them on cold, stormy nights, voices crying out from the lake just before the wind shifts. And if you ever find yourself deep in the woods, near an old fishing cabin that smells like death and silence, don't go inside, because the Wendigo doesn't chase you. It waits. And when you finally see it, it's already too late. Truth or legend? The brothers? They never existed. Black Hollow Lake is just a creation of my own imagination, but the legend of the Wendigo? That is very real. You see, truth and legends are often hard to separate because every legend begins somewhere, with something. Every myth has a beginning. Every whispered tale is born from something. For centuries, the Algonquian tribes warned of a creature lurking in the deep woods, a predator that is a slave to hunger, a curse of the unforgiven. And even now, hikers and hunters still speak of shadows that move when they shouldn't, eyes that burn in the darkness, voices that don't belong. So we have to wonder, if the Wendigo isn't real, why do the stories always describe it the same way? If it's nothing more than a legend, why do people still claim to see it? And if you ever hear your name carried on the wind in a voice that sounds almost familiar, will you answer its call? Thanks for watching this episode of Whispers After Dark. If you enjoyed this chilling tale, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a story. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Do you think there's truth to the legends? And be sure to join me next time for another eerie journey into the unknown. Until then, stay curious, stay cautious, and beware of the Whispers After Dark.